Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer. Buddha at the Gas Pump is an ongoing series of interviews with spiritually awakening people. There have been over 360 of them now, and if this is new to you and you want to check out previous ones, go to batgap.com and look under the past interviews menu, and you'll find all the previous ones organized in 4 or 5 different ways. This show is made possible by the support of appreciative listeners and viewers, and so if you feel like supporting it, there's a donate button on the right-hand side of every page on the site. I'm really honored to have as my guest today Sri M. I've just read his entire autobiography and found it fascinating. Many of you listening and watching will have read Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi, and Sri M's autobiography is somewhat reminiscent of that. He has had an amazing life and all sorts of amazing experiences trekking around the Himalayas with his master. We're going to talk about some of those during this interview. First of all, let me just welcome you. Thank you, Sri M.
Thank you very much.
And we had some technical problems before getting started here, so I appreciate your patience and while we iron those out. Let me read a brief biography of you. Sri M was born in Kerala, South India. At the age of 19 and a half, attracted by a strange and irresistible urge to go to the Himalayas, he left home. At the Vyasa cave, beyond the Himalayan shrine of Badranath, he met his master and lived with him for 3.5 years, wandering freely the length and breadth of the snow-clad Himalayan region. What he learned from his master, Maheshwarnath Babaji, transformed his consciousness totally. Back in the plains, he, as instructed by his master, lived a normal life, working for a living, fulfilling his social commitments, and at the same time preparing himself to teach all that he had learned and experienced. At a signal from his master, he entered the teaching phase of his life. Today, he travels all over the world to share his experiences and knowledge. Equally at home in the religious teachings of most major religions, Sri M, born as Mumtaz Ali Khan, often says, "Go to the core. Theories are of no use." Sri M is married and has 2 children, and he also just told me he has 2 Cocker Spaniels. He leads a simple life, teaching and heading the Satsang Foundation, a charitable concern promoting excellence in education. At present, he lives in Mandanapalli, Andhra Pradesh, forgive me if I pronounce that incorrectly, just 3 hours from Bangalore. And he also just completed a 7,500 and something mile walk from Kanyakumari, which is the southernmost tip of India, to Kashmir, which is way in the north, and we're going to talk about that too. So I'm really glad we're doing this. I'm wondering if it might be good to start with the story that you tell in your autobiography, where a young yogi in the Himalayas doing tapas is approached by an old Muslim man and rejects him, and you could take the story from there.
Sure. Now, I have started with the story without mentioning who these people actually are.
But you learn that as you go along in the book. You kind of figure it out. Yeah.
Yes, I have left it to be figured out because I didn't want to, from the beginning itself, say that I was this and I was that and so on. So actually the characters in the story, the young yogi to whom the Muslim, the Sufi man comes, is me in some past life.
Right.
And the great yogi who is the guru is none other than Sri Guru Babaji, who for hundreds and thousands of years have been known to exist in the Himalayas. Yogananda Paramahamsa in his autobiography calls him Mahavatar, but that was a word, Mahavatar was a term coined by Yogananda Paramahamsa to show that avatars have come and gone and there's somebody who's still there.
But he's not really an avatar.
Well, we call him Sri Guru Babaji. To be very frank with you, we really don't know much about this person except that we know that he exists and is not born in the normal way from like somebody's womb.
Yeah.
I would prefer to call him a being with human form. Let's put it that way. So I have in my past life been associated with him for some time.
And in this
So
life, you met him several times.
only twice.
Twice. Uh-huh.
Twice. Not more than that.
Right.
Twice. So, in fact, my coming and being born in a Muslim family and then being found out or discovered again by Maheshwarnath Babaji, who was Sri Guru Babaji's senior most disciple, as far as I know, is part of that story, because I had to learn how it feels to belong to one community and not get accepted by another, even though you're most sincere.
Yeah.
So I had to go through this, but because of one's own practical and spiritual personal experience, today I have no such problem of being accepted by the community, which is the majority community in India, for instance.
But in the context of this story, you in your previous life were a young yogi and perhaps a little arrogant or something, and this Sufi man came to you and treating you to take him on as a student. You brushed him off, rejected him. He said, okay, then I'm going to jump in this river, and you said, well, do whatever you want. He jumped in the river and drowned, and then Babaji came to you and said, bad move.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a bad move. Who do you think you are? You know?
Yeah.
And because from the point of view of somebody who has had high spiritual experience, there's no difference between people, external differences. I mean, one has to see how mature a person is spiritually. And if he needs guidance, it's our duty to guide, not ask questions. So that was a big lesson to me. Plus, that you can also go quite high in your meditation and so on and still be left with an ego, you know, an arrogant ego, which is it's so difficult to cut out. I see sometimes, especially when people, you know, when you're somewhat different from others and you have some qualities which may be more than human in some way, people start worshipping you and, you know, looking up to you. Now, the one thing you have to be very careful is how one's own ego begins to expand when this happens, you know. So this was a great lesson to me. So in this life, I have been extremely careful about this, been watching myself carefully. And if somebody praises me too much, I try to just cut it off and say no. You know, you must have read the Gita and so on, I'm sure, because I kind of know roughly your background. And I think that one of the things in the Gita that really has affected me, is Tulya Nindastu Mauni, which means the yogi considers praise and blame as the same. Neither does he get flattered, nor he goes down when somebody says, oh, he's a stupid idiot. So this is something very, very important.
I really think it is, and it really, I've given it a lot of thought to it and talked about it with a lot of people, because there's so many teachers, some of whom are really impressive. You know, they've really attained a very high state. You sit in their presence and you feel very profound darshan. They do wonderful things and beneficial things, and yet you find, you know, they have these scandals and problems and issues that happen over and over again. And there are a few exceptions, but it seems to be generally the rule more than the exception, and it really confuses and disillusions people when this happens.
Yeah. So I would, do you want me to respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I would like to say this. Before you choose a person as your teacher, give it a lot of time. I think one shouldn't accept somebody based on external appearances. Somebody might look very nice and holy, but that doesn't mean anything. And the other is, it is these disciples who raise you up and take you right up, and then suddenly when something happens to them which they don't like, they drop you down like hot coals, like a hot brick. So the less dependent you are on these, your so-called followers, at least internally, the better off you are. You know, one has to be careful on this point. Very often some of the scandals are created by people who have had a personal problem, possible. Sometimes they may be genuine, can't say that.
Yeah.
And sometimes they may also be to test you. This is also possible. So there are so many angles to this. So my understanding is when you go to a spiritual teacher, we just need to ask how we are progressing rather than look at other things. When I first went to the Ramakrishna mission, Babaji had told me spend some time with the Ramakrishna mission. You know the Ramakrishna mission is
Sure.
a very big organization. So when I went to Belumat to the headquarters, there was this Swami Ranganathananda, who's a well-known person. He has lectured, he has written on the Upanishads. He was at one time the president of the Ramakrishna mission also. He was not at that time. He was heading the Ramakrishna Institute of Culture. So when I went as a young man, he called me aside and he said, look, you have come to an ashram. Don't think that you have come to the holiest place on earth, because this place is also built up of human beings. And when there are many human beings, there are these small caucuses and circles and so on. So don't get caught up with this. Don't think everybody is a saint. Many of them are here for sadhana. They are not saints. So you stay free of these little groups and try to understand the teachings. And if you want to understand the teachings, there are books, there are senior monks, talk to them, figure it out, but don't get caught up in this. Now, this can happen in any ashram, because an ashram is a small place where so many kinds of people come together. And different people come for different reasons. Some come to become successors to the Guru. So, so there is some politics involved. I mean, it's normal because we are human beings. Therefore, in this situation, it's difficult to avoid it. So be careful.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
Some gurus, I think Mata Amritanandamai uses this expression. She says sometimes an ashram is like rocks in a tumbler. You put all these rough rocks in a tumbler and it tumbles and tumbles and tumbles, and the rocks are, getting all their rough edges smoothed out, but they all come out nice and smooth in the end.
Yeah, maybe not all, but at least some.
Some, yeah.
Let me say.
So it seems like there are a couple of cautionary notes here. One would be for teachers themselves to somehow be cautious of and somehow rise above the possibility of having their ego inflated by the attention that comes to them. And maybe we can talk about that one a little. Let's talk about that one a little bit more before we go on to the second point I was about to make. I mean, I guess it brings up the question of when does one actually become qualified to become a teacher? I've heard that in Zen circles it's said that after your awakening you should wait at least 10 years. And so who determines, and I know you waited a long time and went through all kinds of ordinary life circumstances before you took on any kind of teaching role. How does one know one's ready, and how does one avoid prematurely jumping into that role?
Yeah, I can give you a few guidelines. This is from my experience. When you teach, when one starts talking to people, I did it very hesitantly in the beginning. You have to see if the words that you use, are they really coming from your personal experience? Or are you imagining them to be your personal experience? Maybe you have read about them somewhere. So this is one thing that can help us to watch out. The other is, some of the teachings are not meant for everybody. So when you say the same thing to 100 people, there's a possibility that some people take it in one way and some people take. So we should have the capacity to judge what is to be said here and what is not to be said here. Or what is to be said there and what is not to be said here. See, this is an extreme way of doing it, expressing it. When Jesus Christ or whoever, the great yogi who walked in Jerusalem, said, give that which is good and give not that which is good unto dogs. Cast your pearls before swine, lest they cast them down and trample them and turn again and rend you. I wouldn't say that. I won't call anybody a dog or a swine, but it's an extreme way of saying it. Yeah. So we have to watch this very carefully. Is this person ready to take? Now the problem is when you go in into a large gathering and speak, you can't really choose whom you're talking to. So the only thing is you have to say, okay, I'll talk, let's see who can take it up and who doesn't. The other criteria is don't give too much importance to certain powers that may develop in the yogi. So try and as much as possible to keep away from all this business of healing and things like that. If you want to have a spiritual teaching, it's better to stick to it as the central part of your life. That's the other thing. So these are some of the criteria which I took. The most important, of course, is that unless you have experience, it's better not to teach. Because if something goes wrong, you won't be able to put it back in order. This is especially so when you come to yogic teachings. The teachings of Kundalini Yoga or the teachings of Kriya Yoga, you can't just teach somebody if you don't know and if you haven't experienced it yourself. Because tomorrow if something goes wrong, you won't be able to set it right. And we are dealing with powerful energies.
What about teachers that are maybe partway there? Can they help people up to a point? For instance, you know, one might be qualified to teach grammar school, or one might be qualified to teach high school or college or on the graduate level, and you could be very useful as a grammar school teacher even if you would not be qualified to teach at the college level. So in the spiritual sense, do you also see that with spiritual teachers?
I think so. This is possible, provided they are transparent and sincere and clear and say, look, this I have not experienced. This is very important.
So honesty.
Yeah, be very honest
humility.
about it. Say, say this is what it is said. I have, in fact, even in the Upanishads, when the great rishis taught certain things, they said, I don't understand how to put this to you. Now what about us, ordinary people? So we have to say that, look, this is how it is in the scriptures, this is the science, this is how much I have practiced. You can also practice it, but beyond that, I don't know.
I remember a line from the Upanishads, I bet you can pinpoint it, where there's some saying about ultimate reality, and then the saying is, perhaps he knows, and if he doesn't know, then maybe nobody knows.
Exactly. It doesn't say nobody knows. Perhaps he knows, or perhaps he knows not.
Right.
So this is from the Rig Veda. It's about the creation hymn. You know, it says, in the beginning, what existed? Does this exist? Or did only the gods exist? Or was there nothing around? And then it says, who knows? Perhaps he knows who is the chief of the gods, or perhaps he knows not. See, this attitude should be something to be kept fresh in our minds. It shouldn't be said, oh, this is Rig Veda 2,000 years ago, let's not forget it. No, this is so important.
Yeah. So even the rishis who cognize the Rig Veda are admitting that they have their limitations.
Absolutely. Everybody. I think as long as you have a human body, there are some restrictions, there are some limitations, especially because you are talking about something which is beyond description. The Kena Upanishad, one of the most important of principal Upanishad, says, this the word cannot express. Yad vachana abhyutitam yanavagabi, that which words cannot express. That alone is the Supreme Being, nothing that you worship here. Now this is a very sweeping statement. So one has to be very careful with this. I'm saying the key is to say, look, this much I know, beyond that I don't know, but these are the teachings. Practice it and find out for yourself. Yeah,
on a related note, here's something you said in your book. You said, no human being with a physical brain can ever be omniscient.
I believe fully.
Yeah. And actually one thing related to what you just said is that, you know, teachers saying this much I know and that much I don't know. I sort of find it healthy in the case of most teachers if they have some kind of connection with a lineage or tradition. They give homage to a teacher and are not taking upon themselves the whole, you know, authorship of the knowledge.
That helps.
Yeah.
That helps. Like I belong to the Nath Sampradaya because Maheshwarnath Babaji was a Nath. And before him, his guru was Babaji, who has no sampradaya. I mean, who has no, we can't say he belongs to this tradition or that. But I still feel I belong to that tradition of them. So when I teach, I usually say, this is what the teaching says, you know. And it's a deliberate attempt not to protect myself more than the teaching.
Right.
It's deliberate. I might have had the experience. And when I said in my book, which you said just now, that nobody is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, this connects to your previous question in some way. Many disciples or many followers begin to consider a great teacher or someone who's become famous as omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient.
Right.
And then when they discover in life due to certain experiences that it is not so, then they get completely disillusioned.
I've seen that.
You see? So, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, there was a woman that I was arguing with at one point that felt like her teacher was omniscient, and I said, oh really? Do you think your teacher knows what we're emailing about right now? She said, oh yeah, she's totally tuned in. And you know, then the woman ended up getting breast cancer, and she got very disillusioned because she felt like her teacher should have known it and should have said something and so on. And I hated to say I told you so, but there was that sort of feeling, you know.
If you have a minute,
sure.
Can I?
Yeah.
This is an old happening which happened in Thiruvananthapuram at the Ramana ashram. You know, Ramana Maharshi. So, Ramana, there was a young man who came to the ashram and spent 3 days without food. And he was also in Mauni, like Maharshi, he didn't speak. And then after 3 days, he sends a note to the Maharshi. He's also in Mauni, like the Maharshi hardly spoke, Ramana Maharshi. He sends him a note saying, look, I have been here for 3 days. Nobody asked me, are you hungry? Nobody gave me food. And you, I've seen you every day. You didn't ask me either. And you're feeding monkeys, but what about me? You know, and there's a beautiful answer given by Maharshi. He broke his silence to speak to this man. He said, if you didn't ask, how would I know?
That's great.
And there are people who think that Ramana Maharshi was omniscient.
Yeah.
I think he didn't think so himself.
And yet, on the other hand, there were some instances where he knew something that it obviously took some deep ability to know. For instance, there was this man who was a painter, and he was painting the cave up above, and Vipakshu cave or whatever it was called, and Ramana was down in his ashram, and he was standing in the back of the hall during some ceremony that was being held to commemorate some renovation that had taken place in the ashram, and he was feeling so bad that Ramana couldn't appreciate the work he had done in this other place. And so there was this whole story where Ramana wasn't supposed to go any place because his health was bad, and some attendants found him basically crawling up the mountain on his hands and knees, getting all cut and so on, to get up to that cave to see this guy's work and appreciate it. He had just picked up on his thought and felt compelled to go and give him that blessing.
There are 2 points in this. One is the compassion of this person. So important. Yeah. The second is, that doesn't mean always one knows.
Right, right. It's
specific. One may not. Yeah. One may or one may not. It's natural. It's not as if it's built. The other is, somewhere along the line, I think that Babaji used to say this to me, people have misunderstood the Vedantic dictum, which says, that which when once known, nothing more remains to be known. What it means is not that you are omniscient.
Right.
Of course, you may be better than somebody else, of course, because a yogi has certain faculties. But it means that you have got complete satisfaction. You have no more desires to be fulfilled. Therefore, you don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
It means you don't need to know anything, not that you know everything.
Right. Yeah, the way Maharishi Mahesh Yogi used to put it, he said, you gain the benefit that would be had were you to know everything, but you don't know everything.
Yes.
You gain this, what he used to call the home of all knowledge.
Absolutely. I think that's a nice description.
Yeah. There's another point that's related to what we've been talking about with gurus and all, and that is that some people feel like they should hang in there with a particular guru through thick and thin, no matter what happens. Even if the guru seems to be going off the track, they just hang in there because he must be perfect, he must be wiser than me, he must know what he's doing. It seems crazy, but I'll hang in there. And other people sort of, they cut and run, or maybe they move from one teacher to another throughout their life. Now, so gurus for them are somewhat transitionary figures. In your case, you had one primary guru, but you also took instruction and guidance and so on from a variety of other teachers.
Yeah.
So what would you say about that point?
I think that should be left to the aspirant. Different people are made differently. I stuck with one teacher, but this teacher himself instructed me to go and see other people.
Yeah.
So there are such teachers. Now in Sufis, for instance, among the Sufis, there is no compulsion to stick to one teacher. In fact, after a while, the Sufi teacher tells his disciple, now this is all that I can give you, go to this other guy. You see, so there is no such thing. But there are some people who like to stick on and hang on. And if they are not disillusioned, probably they are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
What you have to watch is, do they get disillusioned at the end?
Yeah.
And even, there's another good thing here. Even if the guru turns out to be a fake, all the faith that you have put in him and the practice you have done sincerely may help you, even if it doesn't help him.
That's a good point. I mean, who was it? Dhruva that kind of became a master archer just worshiping a statue, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then his teacher came along and told him to cut off his thumb eventually. But yeah.
And we have in Kerala, we have a beautiful story about, the Nambudiri Brahmins of Kerala were supposed to be experts in mantras and snake charming and, snake poison and so on. So the story is, a man who belonged to a very low social scale came to him and wanted to learn how to revive a person who was bitten by a snake. So this guy was very upset with him, and he was standing outside and he said, "Hey, Madha Kushmanda," in Malayalam, which means, oh, rotten pumpkin. He doesn't know what he's asking for. That kind of thing. This guy, in his innocence, thought that it was a mantra. So he went away into the forest and sat somewhere near the river and chanted it for a number of years. And one day, a man was bitten by a snake, and he was brought to this big Nambudiri Brahmin man, and he looked at him and said, "No chance now, take him away to the crematorium." So they were taking him to the crematorium. They had to pass through the side of the river, and this guy was sitting there and chanting, "Rotten pumpkin, rotten pumpkin." He got up and said, "What's wrong?" They said, "There's a man who's, we're taking him to the cremation." He said, "How can it be? Bring him here." And he said, "Rotten pumpkin," and the guy got
That's great.
So, you see, faith.
Yeah, just
energy,
faith.
complete, and
devotion, dedication. So let's get back to your story. We'll pick it up in your autobiography. So you were the yogi in the Himalayas. Babaji said you made a big mistake rejecting this guy. You need to sort of you do the yogic kriya to leave your body now, and you'll be reborn. And you were reborn as in Kerala in a Muslim family. And at the age of 12 or something, you saw this impressive man standing under a tree in the backyard.
9 years.
9 years. So there was this man who turned out later to be Maheshwar Babaji. Not Sri Guru Babaji, but
no.
Your teacher, Sri Guru Babaji's student.
Yes.
And he spoke to you briefly. And what happened at that conversation?
You mean when he met me at the age of 9?
Yes.
Yes. Now, it was in the backyard of our house, under a big jackfruit tree. And the first thing he asked me, I was very frightened in a way. There was a stranger, a very tall, big man standing with matted hair. I've never seen anything like that. So I was very nervous. So the first thing he asked me was, "Do you remember anything?" In Hindi, "Kuch yaad aaya?" he asked me. Well, we all speak Urdu at home, even though I was born and brought up in Kerala because of the background.
Right.
So I said, I don't remember a thing. I don't remember anything. I was wondering remember what? So he touched my head with his hand and said, over time you'll get to know. So this was the only experience I had at that point. And then he told me to go back home. And I was walking across, and when I tried to turn, I could not bring myself to turn. There was something which was stopping me from looking back.
To see if he was there.
Yeah. And then I reached the kitchen and then turned around and he was gone. So I still think he went out. There was a small gate near the compound wall, so probably he did. But the thing was, from that day, in the night, middle of the night especially, I used to be kind of woken up from sleep, as if, it's not as if there was a presence, but something woke me up, and I would then lie down and keep looking at my navel in the Nabhi area, and there would be some kind of a light coming there, and it would spread over my body, and it was very blissful. So I had many such experiences every night. That I think that was my spiritual preparation, and that was a spontaneous meditation, because I had not studied anything about meditation till that age. So this went on till I finished my college. I had several experiences. Meanwhile, if you read the autobiography, I met many holy people around, saints and yogis, and then I got this compulsion to get out. I felt like a bird in a cage, kind of caged in. I wanted to just break and fly. And there was this Himalayas beckoning me, of course. I didn't even know I was going to meet Maheshwarnath Babaji. I only knew that something was on and something was there. And I had to go. I had to get out of the situation.
And you had the sense that maybe you weren't looking for someone specific to meet, but you had the sense that there must be these great beings in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
You'd heard the stories, and you just had to go and find out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'd read, by the time I had also read the autobiography for yogi.
Sure.
And I thought there must be some yogis up there in the Himalayas. I didn't expect to meet Babaji, but somebody must be there. And so I went to many ashrams. You know the story. I met many people, but I was not fully satisfied. I kept going. In fact, Swami Chidananda was the head of the Divine Life Society at that point in Rishikesh. And he told me one day, I don't think you stay here. I don't think this is enough. You're looking for somebody high up there, upper reaches. And he warned me, but be careful, there are lots of fakes around. So
yeah, I remember even one very respected person said, "Oh, don't believe all those stories. There's just a bunch of, hashish smoking, sadhus. You're not going to find anybody remarkable up here." And you were getting pretty discouraged. In fact, you were just about, I think you said in your book, you were about to throw yourself in a river and just, give up the ghost. And then at that final moment, that evening, you met
Babaji.
You met Babaji.
Yeah, I was contemplating suicide because
Right.
I thought, you have burnt your boats, or burnt your bridges, or whatever the expression is, and then you come here and you find there's nothing here. I mean, what will you do? I thought maybe this body is not suitable this time. And especially the person who discouraged me was a high up priest in the Badrinath temple, and so I thought he must be knowing, he must be speaking the truth. So that's when I met Babaji again. And
Can you recount that experience of when you first met Babaji again? And keep in mind, people listening, that we're not referring to Sri Guru Babaji, who Yogananda talked about in his book. We're talking about his student, but we're going to keep using the name Babaji because that's how you refer to him.
Maheshwarnath Babaji.
Yes,
but
right.
when I say Babaji, I mean him generally.
Right.
Yeah. So it so happened it was evening time, and I had passed the Vyasa Gufa and gone up. So I was coming back. I was looking down at the Alaknanda. The river there is called Alaknanda. It was beating down on the rocks, and I said to myself, half a minute is enough to take your life here if you just jump in. So then it occurred to me, let me go back to the Vyas Gufa, which is a little further down.
That's Vyasa's cave?
Yeah.
Right.
And now it's become terrible. The other day somebody went and said, there are hundreds of people there, and there's a priest who has set himself up. There's no way you can sit here. In those days there was nothing, it was just a small cave. So I went back and said, let me meditate for a while before I decide. Something may happen, who knows? So I went back, and before I reached there, as soon as I reached there, I saw a fire in the mouth of the cave. Now, you know, generally sadhus, especially those with the Nath Sampradaya, they have fires always. They're called dhunas. So I thought there must be somebody inside. There's a fire here, because when I went this way, there was nothing. So I slowly edged myself into the cave, and Babaji stood up. The moment he stood up, that image flashed in my mind when I was 9 years old. This same tall person with just a small cloth, matted hair, and that big Rudraksh which was on his neck. You know, it was the same. And then he stood up, and his first words that he said was, "Oh, so you have gone around window shopping and come back to me." I mean, he didn't use these words,
right.
But he said, "Acha ghum phir kar phir hamare paas pahunch gaye." So I said to him, "Babaji, I don't think I'm going to leave you forever. Believe me." And he laughed and he said, "We'll think about it." In Hindi he said, "Dekha jayega, we'll see."
You know, one thing that amazed me about your book, did you keep a diary while you were going through all these adventures?
I have not kept a single diary about anything in my life. And yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's like this is 40 years ago. You're traveling all around, and you're actually able to remember what you ate for lunch at a particular place. And I couldn't possibly do that.
No, I couldn't do it myself. The thing is, when I wrote this book, every time I sat down and wrote a chapter, all the memories would come back to me. The moment I finished, there would be nothing left. Now, if you suddenly ask me about something in the book, I might have forgotten now.
Yeah.
So I might probably refer back and then tell you, yeah, I did say that. Because it used to come in a flow, and when it was over, I had to put my pen down and shut it up for the day. And sometimes for several days I couldn't write. But when it came, I had to stay up the whole night, because it was like a possession kind of. Please don't mistake me, I was not possessed.
No, I understand. Yeah, you were just the creative surge that you had to. Yeah.
And then all details, which shocked me myself. I was shocked that I could remember, because I'm very bad. My memory is terrible even today.
Did you feel like you were being guided by Babaji, or by, you know, how the idea of a muse that is speaking through you or something?
No, it was not as if it was speaking through me, but somewhere somebody was kind of switching on something, and the whole thing came out.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Nice.
You know?
One thing is that in your book, you went around, you saw many teachers, and you were often being initiated into this Kriya or that thing, and a lot of different instructions and initiations. And I can't imagine that you would actually be able to practice all these things on a regular basis, because there were so many of them. So were you just sort of getting a little taste of this and a taste of that, and then you had your main practice that you stuck to?
Yeah, but whenever I took, like Sri Vidya was given to me by somebody on instructions from Babaji. So during that period when I was supposed to practice it, I did it fully.
I see.
I didn't do anything else. I was only doing that. Of course, I had a little bit of my Kriya Yoga for 10-15 minutes, and then I did this. So Babaji's instruction was, when you get something, practice it fully with complete attention. Then don't divert your mind. And then when you have touched something and you know, probably this is where one understands what's happened, then you stop and shift. So when I did one thing, I was only doing that. I was not, you know, drifting around.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I want to get into some stories of things you encountered in the Himalayas. Some of them are pretty amazing. And
unbelievable?
Yeah, might be. Some people might be incredulous, and we're going to get into a few of those. But I just want to, before we get into that, I just want to bring up a general question for you. I don't know how tuned in you are to contemporary spiritual teachers and the whole scene, but there are a lot of people coming on who claim to have had an awakening. personally, I think probably there are many degrees of awakening, and sometimes these proclamations seem kind of ultimate, like I am awakened, and I always feel like there's going to be more. There are even people, there's a whole kind of category of people who say, you're already enlightened. Everybody's already enlightened. All you have to do is accept that and you're done. And whereas I have a much more sort of progressive, incremental understanding of things, that there's a vast range of potential spiritual development, and virtually nobody's done because there's always something more. So I'm kind of interested in the idea of a roadmap of higher consciousness and sort of what the range of possibilities is. And I think it would be valuable for people to understand that in general. Firstly, because it's inspiring. If you realize what's possible, it's like, whoa, you know, that could be my experience in life. And secondly, because it perhaps might safeguard the path and prevent people from getting sidetracked in things which really don't have that much relevance to higher states of consciousness, but which seem interesting or flashy and so on. And also because, just a final point, just because it would safeguard people from feeling like they're done when, relatively speaking, in terms of what's possible, they might just be getting started.
Right.
What do you have to say about all that?
Yeah, I think so, myself, in some ways. The great thing about the spiritual field is that it's actually unending. It's not as if you do and say, oh, this is over. It's never over. It's vast. It's like the Milky Way. So when somebody says, I'm done with, and it's over, I feel a little not so happy with that situation. Yeah. I think, yeah, maybe he's done with something. Yeah, okay. But there's something more. You understand? So, the important point about not being sidetracked, you may have some visions, you may have some colors, you may hear some sounds, and then if you think you have done everything possible, you're not. I mean, this is just, I always tell people, do you have as many visions as somebody who has had LSD? No.
And even if you do, so what?
So what? They also have it.
Yeah.
Well, this is apart from the fact that when talking about samadhi and different ways of getting into samadhi, Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says that chemical process is also possible.
He does. He says, what, drugs, gems, mantras, or herbs, mantras, gems, and something else, I forget.
Well, it's very interesting because in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in the samadhi part, how to attain samadhi, there are different ways described, and one of the things said is Ishvara Pranidhanena. That means also by surrendering to Ishvara, God. And the next sentence is Aushadhanani. It's also possible through chemicals, medicines.
Right.
So God and chemicals have been put just 1 foot below each other.
Well, in fact, you had an experience with the soma plant, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. That'll be interesting. Here's a question that came in from Vijay Mukherjee in Dallas. You'll probably be meeting him when you go to Dallas. But he's this is related to what we've been saying here, and I have a feeling of how you're going to answer this. But he says, is your present state on a par with, say, Sri Guru Babaji? What, if not, what makes one being so evolved and another less evolved?
Well, Sri Guru Babaji is in a category which normal human beings who are born and brought up, born in an womb, cannot compare with. They're there for a special purpose, such beings. So I can definitely not compare with that. Yeah, I have had some spiritual experience, and I believe that everyone has the potential to touch that. It requires a great deal of hard work. There are no shortcuts possible in this matter. So this is my answer to the question.
Do you feel that if spiritual evolution is never ending, as you just said, that eventually somehow all souls will end up being exalted souls like Sri Guru Babaji? Eventually, big capital E.
Oh, certainly, I think, but it may take ages before we touch that. It may take ages, but ultimately the evolution is towards perfection. And before perfection, it has to go through a grind.
Yeah.
So we are going through the grind. When we come out and then gradually go higher and higher, every soul's destiny ultimately, I think, would be to reach the higher stage. But it will take ages.
Right.
It will take time. And therefore, every human being has a potential. I recently, when I was on this walk, this long walk, marathon walk. I got the bishop, Catholic bishop from Kerala called me and said, "Is it possible for you to meet the Pope?" I said, "Listen, I'm on a walk. If you think I can break it for a few days and go, because after all," so he said, "Okay." So I went and met the Pope.
Went to Rome?
Yeah, I went to Rome, and I had 10 minutes, little more than 10 minutes of personal audience with the Pope. And it was interesting. I went because he's the head of a vast, big church, and which is hopefully keeping Jesus Christ's teachings intact, hopefully. So and anyway, he's a person who so many people worship and regard as very high. So I thought it's a good thing, and I thought the new Pope is also a new person. So I went to see him, and with great respect, and I did namaskar as we do to all holy men, and he also did, and we had a chat. And one thing struck me, his words, was he said, "Look, every saint has a past, and every sinner, therefore, has a future." This one of the things he said which really affected me. So I'm saying this, any great saint, even if it is Sri Guru Babaji, at one time must have come from where the ordinary human being is. And therefore, the ordinary being has all potential to go there at some point. He may not be today or tomorrow, but you see.
Yeah. There's that verse in the Gita, even if you're the greatest of all sinners, you shall cross over all, what is it, cross over all,
your different
by the raft of knowledge alone.
Prarabdhas, before you reach there. And in fact, Krishna also says to Arjuna in the Gita, it's very interesting. He says, Arjuna, you and I have all been born millions of times. Both. Difference is that I know and you don't. That's all.
Yeah. I have a question about that, actually, since you mentioned that. There's that verse which is, never was a time when I was not, nor you, nor these rulers of men, nor will there ever be a time when all of us shall cease to be. And that can be read two ways. It can be read in terms of, we are Brahman, we are the self, and there is never, the unreal has no being, the real never ceases to be. Or it can be read as individual souls who have always been and will never cease to be, with some flavor of individuality. Which way do you read it, or both?
There are even a whole tradition in India, in this country, I'm not here, but in India has been this, it's kind of a controversy really, because if you go the Vedantic way, there's only the Brahman and everything else is temporary, coming and going. Now, there are other streams of philosophy which are as ancient or even more ancient than that, like the Sankhya philosophy of Kapila, and the Jains. Jains is a very old system. Rishabhadeva's image was found in Mohenjo-daro, who is the first Tirthankara of the Jains. So the Jains are atheists. They don't believe in God and a creator God. But they believe that each soul is immortal. And to discover that is the aim of life. When you're free of all distractions and everything, then the pure soul shines. Now the only controversy is when that pure soul shines in itself, is it the whole Brahman or is it an individual thing? This is something which we have to experience. From my understanding, it takes a long, long time to discover probably that there is only one and that these things don't exist. For a long, in your spiritual evolution, for quite a length of time, you still retain a little bit of identity. In fact, if somebody asked me to become the Brahman, I would maybe refuse, because like Guru Nanak said, I like to be the ant that tastes the sugar, then become the sugar, because if I become the sugar, I don't taste anything. So it's a great thing to, in fact, even retain a little bit of individuality while accepting the fact that perhaps there is something where there is nothing at all, no individuality.
And I don't know if one has a choice anyway, right? I mean,
one doesn't have a
it
choice.
just happens when it happens.
Yes,
Yeah, I interviewed a Vaishnava, a Krishna Bhakta, a couple of weeks ago, and they have this whole controversy between themselves and the Mayavadis, as they call them.
Absolutely.
I tried to draw him into that conversation, but we didn't really get into it.
Oh, yes. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the founder of this whole system which has become Gaudiya Math, ISKCON, and so on,
Right.
he said that if you listen to the lecture of a Mayavadi once, you'll probably go to hell 100 times. So,
It's a little extreme,
these
maybe.
yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think one shouldn't go to that kind of an extreme, you know.
Yeah.
Adi Shankaracharya preached the Advaita philosophy of Vedanta. But there are many kinds of Vedantas. There is Vishishta Advaita, there is Dvaita. All that is Vedanta.
Yeah.
But I personally would think, like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, you start with duality, then you go to the merger state, and then probably at the last you don't exist, only the Brahman exists.
Yeah, quoting Maharishi Mahesh Yogi again, he made a good point on this point. He said this whole issue of whether you merge with God or you stay separate from God in order to worship God, he said it's not your problem. It's something that it's something you'll consider when you actually get to the point where where you could do that. In the meanwhile, don't worry about it.
Yeah. In fact, there's another point which Maheshwarnath Babaji said to a man who was a complete Vaishnavite. So, you know, the Vaishnavites draw this Vaita.
Yeah.
So, and the Shaivites do this with ash. So he was talking to him. He said, look, at the moment, you can only see the feet of the Lord. Stay with this. When you reach the head, then you decide whether you draw this way or this way.
Yeah. Ah, boy. So there's some good questions coming in from people, mostly from India or Indians in the U.S., but I want to get back to your personal story here for a bit, and we'll get to these questions. So there are a number of stories that happened in your book, which I don't mean to make people skeptical of your whole story, but for those who could suspend their disbelief for a moment and just listen to some of these things, I think you'll find them kind of fascinating. And I've just picked a few that jumped out at me. And for instance, there was one where you had a fever and you were lying in a cave or something, and some might attribute this to, you know, delirium from the fever, but you actually had the experience of apparently a Yeti coming in, you know, a so-called abominable snowman coming into the cave and offering you some kind of cure for the fever. Touch on that one?
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I didn't say or think that it was a Yeti till the last when Babaji suggested that it was so. I didn't have any such idea. I was sick and I had high fever, and I actually saw, this is not a delirium, because the Nepalese guide who was with me also saw it. It's not only that I saw it. He just screamed and ran out of the tent. So there was this thing which is huge and which was whitish and hairish. This much I can remember, and it did look like an orangutan or something like that. And it came close and it made a peculiar nasal whining kind of noise. I thought it was trying to say something. I was scared, but I was not scared enough to run. And anyway, I was very sick to get up. And it put something very, very extremely sweet into my mouth. It pushed it in. And then this Nepalese guy started screaming and he just went away. But the point is that the thing which was in my mouth was there for quite some time. It was not an illusion, that thing which was in my mouth. And my fever came down from the next day onwards. This is a fact. These things are facts. And then I had no idea what this was and who this was. So later on, when we were going back, I told Babaji, you know, he said, look, don't discuss it with people because nobody will believe this. Just leave it alone. So I said, what do you think it could be? He said, there are being still a species which is neither human nor ape. The forgotten species. Rarely in some areas they still do exist. And people call them Yeti and various things, abominable snowman. The names are not important. He said there is a species that still exists. It's almost gone, but there are few. And they're wise, they're intelligent. It's not that they're not intelligent. And this guy was trying to help you.
Yeah. Well, they must be very intelligent if they knew that you were sick in the tent,
Yeah.
and they had some kind of medicine that they could actually give you. It must be a very evolved species.
Yeah. So I don't know. When people ask me, oh, did you see anything? I said, I don't know. This is my experience.
Yeah.
So you call it Yeti, you call it what you want. And from Babaji's description, I believe that there must be some species which has, Darwin has gone a lot of things about evolution, but the missing link has still not been properly solved. It's possible.
Yeah. Okay. Now here's another interesting chapter in your book. There was a chapter called Kedarnath, Opening the Channels. And perhaps you could discuss a little bit of what happened in that chapter.
Babaji wanted me to speed up a little bit of my cleaning up of the inner channels. And he said that the work that you have to do, I think we can't wait for another 2 lives to get it clear. So there are other ways of doing it. Well, it has its plus and minus, but I'm taking the risk. Are you ready for it? I said, Babaji, I have completely surrendered myself to your hands. Whatever you say, I'm ready to do. So he sent me into that little cave. That cave which I'm talking about still exists in Kedarnath. There's a little kutir-like thing built over it. When you're walking down and crossing the bridge to go to the Kedar shrine, if you look up on the left, you'll see a little kutir up there on the mountain. Nobody stays there now. Recently, I sent some people to go and look what's happening there. So they came back and said there's still a little garden, looks like somebody's coming and going. But anyway, so I went there and Babaji left me in the cave and he went away. I was alone to fend for myself. And 3 people came. I don't know whether they were people or what. Again, this was not a hallucination. They had those cloths tied like the Jain sadhus, or what they use in an operation theater, like
a face mask.
Surgeons, yeah. And they were wearing some kind of a white dress, and they were tall. I couldn't see anything except this because it was also hooded. And they came and asked me to close my eyes, and then all I know was that I was moving, but I don't know where I was moving. And they brought me down. It was as if you're going down a tunnel through the stones. And then I came into a small room when they removed the blindfold which they had done. And I saw that there was nothing in the room. It was an oval room. And first they gave me a liquid to drink. They made me lie down on a slab and then sit up and have something to drink. It was a very bitter kind of liquid. It was very greenish and probably herbal. So I drank it. And then they made me lie down. When I drank it, my whole body started kind of
convulsing.
Yeah, kind of conversing and a little painful. They made me lie down, and there was a round kind of a thing like I don't know how to describe it. It was like a helmet, like a big helmet with a round bottom to it. And there was some electric, not some cable-like thing coming out of it. So they fitted it some bit here and here, here and here. And then they didn't make, there was no injury, it was fitted on the top. And then I lay down. And then I had some experiences, which for the first time I was experiencing that I was outside my body and looking down at myself. And then from there I was taken somewhere and given some instructions. And then I was brought back. And then I can't give you the time because it seemed the time had kind of in a different dimension time. kindly. When I came back, it was like a jet lag. I'm back. And then they took this out, and then they again blindfolded me and got me out of there. So I went in front of the kutir where Babaji lived, and I bowed down to Babaji and said, it's done. So he called me and checked me here, there. Okay, go and do your Kriya in the evening, he said, we'll see. So after that time, for a long time, whenever I did Kriya, at the end of it, I felt like lying down in Shavasana, and I would slowly get out of the body and look down. It went on for some time, and then it slowly subsided.
I think you said that after that procedure that there was this kind of a deep, clear unity to your experience too. Everything was unified.
Yeah, that's true. There were certain facts and certain experiences which I couldn't bring together in one piece. And after this, it was as if they were all put together, like the jigsaw puzzle. I saw everything clearly, kind of. And I thought that it might have probably taken me many lives to get there if they hadn't done some kind of a procedure.
Do you have any idea who these beings were and where they are from or anything like that?
Babaji never said anything about this except to say that they were not from the earth.
Meaning they might be from someplace physically distant or from a more subtle realm, celestial realm or something?
I've never followed this up, but from my experiences later on in life and having understood various things, I think they could have been from another realm.
Okay. I hope you don't mind my asking you questions about these particular stories. I don't want people to brush you off as a kook, but I think those who are open to the possibility that there's more to life than meets the eye might find these things interesting. I certainly did.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I agree, because it's so funny to think that you are the only living beings on this earth. I mean, on this universe. It's so ridiculous. If you come to think of it, we are smaller than the smallest speck of sand when you compare with the whole Milky Way.
Oh yeah.
And yet we think that anything that has to be there should be here.
Yeah. Actually, I heard recently that there are more stars in the known universe than there are grains of sand on all the beaches in the world. Just, trillions of stars. And these days, with I forget the name of the telescope, but
Hubble.
Well, there's Hubble, and there's another one that starts with a K, and that's specifically designed for trying to Kepler, maybe. That's trying to find whether there's planets around other stars, and they're beginning to find that planets seem to be the norm. Yeah, it's like most stars have planets.
Absolutely. So what's the condition that there's no life up there? And maybe some of the they are more superior to us. And ancient times, they always talked about the devas coming and going and so on. So maybe at some period it's been cut off. Now it's very rare.
Well, that leads us right into the next story. You have a chapter called Fireball from the Sky.
Yes.
Can we talk about that one?
Sure. Why not? I have nothing to hide. The only thing is, people might think I'm not okay here.
They might, but so what?
This thing about the fireball is also something which I saw when I was neither sleeping nor dreaming nor in any kind of. Anyway, I hardly ever took any narcotics or anything, except when I went to the Naga sadhus for a short period and stayed with them. But Babaji said, find out, go. Yeah. So I was perfectly okay. I had had a meal and I was sleeping when this happened. It was like, if you go to Arundhati cave, if you've been to Rishikesh, there is the Vashishta cave. It's about 22 kilometers from Rishikesh towards Badrinath. So if you go down from Vashishta cave, then you come to the Ganga, the river. Then you walk along, and then up there is the little cave with not more than 2-3 people can stay there. It's called the Arundhati cave. Now, I was sleeping in the last part of it inside, and Babaji never slept. I've never seen him sleep. The maximum, the only thing I've seen him in, sometimes he would lean and sit, that's all. And he always had a dhuni, fire. So I kind of heard a thunder.
I just should add, and he never wore anything more than a
small
cloth around his waist,
cloth,
even when you were hiking up to 18,000 feet in the snow.
And barefoot.
And barefoot, yeah.
Even in Gomukh, the Gangotri Glacier.
Right.
Anyway, so, I heard a kind of a thunder, like a distant thunder, so I woke up. And I didn't get up, I was watching. From the cave, first comes the river, and the cave is up here, and the other side you have a horizon with a lot of trees. Mm-hmm. So from there I saw something coming. It looked to me like a moon, like a moon which has become slightly large, like that. And it came. And there was this light kind of thunder kind of sound coming, and it came straight down and sat near the fire which Babaji had. And when it sat, there was a thunderclap, very loud. And when it came near, I found out that it was around this big, almost as big enough for me to sit, for instance.
Right, a big sphere. Mm-hmm.
It was a big sphere, yes.
Right.
And then it opened. So by the time I was really very, very scared. So then it opened, and that made me even more scared, because inside I saw some kind of a bluish colored serpent, like a snake. It's as if the snake was made of blue glass, deep blue glass, but it was a live thing. It was not and there was something going on between that and Babaji, because it seemed to be some sort of a conversation. I couldn't grasp anything.
They were hissing.
They were kind of hissing and making noises. And I was so scared for some time, I thought maybe I've finally become deranged. Seriously. But I thought it can't be, I can see it. So Babaji said, come here. So I went near him and held on to him because I didn't know what was happening. Then he said, bend down and bow down. So I bowed down. And I think the snake put its head on my head for some time. And then I got up and it got in and it vanished. Mm-hmm. So what do you make of it? I mean, I couldn't make anything out of it at that point. Later on I asked Babaji, and he gave me a fairly long description about the Nagaloka and how there are many worlds, and this is the snake world, and the one who came was Nagaraj, who is the prince of the Naga world. So I said, but why did he come here to you? He said that there was some problem in the Nagaloka, something was going on, and he came to ask my advice on how to sort it. So I said, Babaji, you are an earth person, you live on this earth, and somebody comes from Nagaloka to solve the problem, to ask your advice. Is this possible? He said, there are in this world people with human bodies who are more evolved than all the Nagas in the Nagaloka. Beyond that, I don't know a thing.
I once heard a story that I didn't know what to make of it. I thought it might be somebody made up a story or not, but it was a story about when Maharishi Mahesh Yogi first opened. I used to be a student of his, as I keep mentioning, where he first opened his ashram in Rishikesh, and someone came into the room and saw him and Tatwala Baba, whom you know, talking to a large snake. And apparently the discussion was about making some agreement whereby the cobras and snakes in the area would never bite any of the ashramites. And apparently that never happened. Nobody ever got bitten by a snake. It was one of those far out stories that I thought, well, who knows? I don't know.
Well, I would say it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible, because I also know that there are lots of cobras in Rishikesh. Apart from the serious scorpions, there are also lots of cobras, and there are black cobras. There used to be, I don't know how much now. And to live in that place where the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi built his caves would have been difficult if there's not some kind of an agreement between the snake, because that place was very well known for these. It's actually the way to Nilkant. From behind, you go right up and you can reach Nilkant.
What's Nilkant?
Nilkant is a Shiva temple on top of the hill in Nilkant, and it's right behind that. When you go where the caves used to be, cut across and then you keep climbing and you come to Nilkant after an hour or an hour and a half. And it's famous because Nilkant again is Shiva and the snakes, and the cobras. So that area is a cobra invested area, and halfway to Nilkant there's a cave called Mauni Baba's cave, which has 3 underground caves. If you don't know, they won't show you, but once you go in there, then there's one down, then there's one down, there's 3. And that place also used to be swarming with cobras, the hooded serpents. So I tend to believe rather than disbelieve the story about this.
So there's about 4 questions that have come in that I want to ask you. I'm going to start asking you pretty soon from people who are watching live, but I thought it might be nice for you to tell us the story of when you finally did meet Sri Guru Babaji.
Twice.
Twice.
One was again the same place which we were discussing just now, the road behind the caves, which goes to Nilkant. So this was it happened like Babaji and I, Maheshwarnath Babaji, were having a discussion on teaching of Kriya Yoga. So Babaji gave me a lot of, kind of conditions for teaching Kriya. Looking at the conditions, I said, Babaji, I don't think we can ever teach Kriya to anybody with these conditions. It's not possible. He said, one has to be a celibate. I said, look, there are many householders, people who are married, they would like to have Kriya. You can't say Kriya can be. I said, what about Lahiri Maharaj? I said, oh, that's a different story. So, okay. Anyway, we were having various discussions on this. And then we were walking along the Ganga and came to that quiet spot where it turns in. And then I saw somebody coming. Difficult to describe. I have never seen anybody like that, maybe in my past, but not in this life. A very beautiful looking person with long hair and again bare-bodied just like Babaji, with only a white cloth and barefoot. As soon as he appeared, Babaji prostrated before him. Now, I have never seen Babaji prostrate before anybody. Never. I have seen people touching his feet. I have never seen him do it. So I said, this must be his Guru, and then it struck me that if it is Guru, it's Babaji. So I also prostrated myself. So he lifted me up. I can never forget the touch. It was completely out of this world. And he put his hand on my shoulders and he told Babaji, maybe you should listen to the young man, cut down these requirements. And then he just abruptly took his hands off and walked away. And I wanted to run behind and follow him, And Babaji held me by my hand and said, you can't find him, it's over, finished, leave it. So I saw him turning the corner and I couldn't see what happened afterwards. That was one instance when I saw him for the first time in this life. And the second was when Maheshwarnath Babaji attained Samadhi, Mahasamadhi, when he was passing away. Again, something like what I saw in the Arundhati cave came. This time it was larger. And from inside...
In other words, a golden, a glowing sphere.
Yeah. And from inside, Babaji stepped out, and along with him a young man stepped out, who looked very handsome. Babaji said that this is Nagaraj. I said, but I saw him in the Arundhati cave, it was like a snake. He said, this is his form, this way and that way, both ways. Okay. So he came because he wanted me to take over some of the aspects of Maheshwarnath Babaji into myself for the work. So he put my hand onto Maheshwarnath Babaji's hand, and he put his hand on top of that and held it for a while. And then I actually felt something coming up. Then he released it. And he said to Babaji, yeah, now you can go.
So in other words, there was like a download or a transmission from him
There
to
was
you.
something happening, yeah. There was a download, and I became completely mad. I mean, I don't know how to put this.
Mad with bliss or mad with...
Everything changed. I felt completely different. It was as if some part of Babaji has also got into me. I won't say possessed. No, it's not like that. So then Babaji, then they went off, and Babaji attained samadhi. Very moving thing was that he did nothing but just turned around all four directions, sat down, and breathed hard. It's gone. So I had to fill it up, and when I wanted at least a stone to be put there, I asked him beforehand, at least to identify the place. He said no. So I know the place even now, but you can't locate where it is exactly. It's near Mauni Baba's cave. When I go to the Himalayas and take people with me, we usually sit around the place, but exact location, nobody knows.
Do you have any idea how physically how old your guru was? I mean, I know he was very old and didn't look it. He looked like he was about 30, but did you ever get an idea?
Yes, this much is clear, that he said he was a young man when he met Sri Guru Babaji, and that he was there when Shyamacharan Lahiri went to meet Sri Guru Babaji in the cave. So that is 100 years, and now another 35 years, so 40 years. So I think easily he could have been, from my understanding, about 150 years or so old. But he looked like 30, 35. It's quite young.
Yeah.
And he hardly ate anything. He would drink water also very less. And I somehow felt that he didn't need food, but he just ate sometimes when people offered him food. So it's like that.
Nice. I find all this very inspiring and interesting. I mean, some people might accuse me or us or anybody who finds this interesting of just being sort of fascinated with flashy stuff, which doesn't have concrete relevance to one's personal awakening. But I think, in my opinion, it does, because I think that, as we've said earlier, the range of possibilities and the extent of potential that dwells within us is really vast. And if we dumb it down to say, well, it's just this or it's just that, or you're already enlightened or whatever, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. So, I mean, which is not to say, as you said earlier, that people should get all caught up in all kinds of fanciful, imaginary things. That's not going to help them. But there should be a respect for the possibility that there is a vast range of potential unfoldment, and that there have been great beings, and are great beings now, who are living that way.
If that much is understood, then I think we've gone a long way.
Yeah.
I always tell people, you don't have to believe the stories. Okay, fine. But there are many other chapters which don't have the stories, so don't neglect them. Go through them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, as long as you understand that there are things which are beyond one's understanding as of now, then my job is done. I mean, at least if the mind is open to say there are other possibilities, that's good enough.
In Zen they have a thing called beginner's mind, and I think one way of interpreting that is that one should have, and Amma always says this too, that one should always have the attitude of a beginner, which is not to say that you haven't made progress, but that if one just sort of keeps a humility and an open mind. Who was it? You were telling a story about Confucius or somebody who was pouring tea for someone, and he just kept pouring and pouring, and it kept spilling over. Go ahead and finish the story. Yeah.
Yeah, the Zen master. It's about a very learned professor who was so full of, who gave lectures on maybe even Zen, who went to a Zen master and wanted to learn Zen and experience Satori. So he made tea for him and started pouring the tea, and the cup was overflowing. Then the professor said, "Sir, the cup is overflowing." And the Zen master said, "So how can I give you Zen? Your cup is overflowing." So,
yeah.
So sometimes by our attitude, we shut the door to understanding. Our attitudes, So all I'm saying is suspend your judgment.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Don't accept it. Don't reject it. You suspend your judgment and say there may be other things which we don't know, or there may be other things which can be known through modes which we do not follow. There may be other modes of finding them out. So this much, if it's there, I think my purpose is served. In fact, people should do serious research on these matters. Even the scientists should start looking at it, especially the neurologists and the psych. They should start looking at these. I'm sure they are kind of started this on. That brings me to I'm writing another book now, which this is not the exact title, but the subject matter is the neurological basis of mystical experience or spiritual experience.
Great.
What is the connection between the brain and these experiences? So I'm working. I've done about 3 chapters. I have them with me, but I don't think I put it away somewhere.
Oh, that's okay.
So I am working on that. So we have come to the 4th chapter. I've just been working on it today. It's interesting. It's called the Avadutas. You must have heard about Avadutas.
Sure.
Those crazy people.
The naked sadhus. Yeah.
And completely crazy people who one would think are gone off the rocker. I think in this country they would be inside the asylum. And they're extraordinary people. Something has happened to their brain, but you can't say that it is negative.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. This interests me. And this whole idea of neurophysiology of enlightenment really interests me. In fact, I can introduce you, if you like, to a researcher who's been studying it for decades, very sophisticated EEG research and all. I can put you in touch with him. He might like to study you.
I would be happy if you can do that, because
I'll do that.
I need to. I'm working on this book, and I'm trying to get as many neurologists interested in it. There's one.
This guy, I'll definitely put you in touch. His name is Dr. Fred Travis, and he lives here in my town. He's been doing this EEG research for decades.
Where is this?
Iowa, Fairfield, Iowa.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, the thing about the Avadhut is, do you think? I mean, in your opinion, are they in a very high state of consciousness, and yet some of the circuitry has been fried, and so they behave so strangely? Or do you think that that their behavior and the way they are is a completely legitimate expression for them of higher consciousness, and it's just part of the variety of life that there should be these sorts of strange expressions?
I think these people have broken into this suddenly, not step by step.
Without the proper integration.
They just broken into it,
Yeah.
and they've come across something so extraordinary that the ordinary brain is not able to come to terms with it completely. However, since they have touched that energy, it's possible that they might be able to bring it about in other people, not deliberately, but for the fact that they're a dynamo, so you touch a wire and get something out of it. But none of these people we know of who did any teaching in this kind of step-by-step way and instructed people or had disciples, no. But people who have been following other disciplines, when they go and sit with them, they do get something out of them.
Yeah.
And so I feel that they burst upon the truth so suddenly. I don't know for what reason, but that it kind of shocks some parts of their system, and they're not integrated with it. You know.
So theoretically, if there could be people who appeared very normal and could be running a business or raising a family or something, who could actually be in as high, if not higher, a state than some of these abahuts, but it was integrated, it's balanced.
Yes, integrated. I would almost agree with what you said, that somewhere there's some circuit has been burned, because these energies are tremendous. Even I feel sometimes that little bit somewhere my circuit might have got burned.
Yeah. Well, you know, on this note, I've been several people contact me from time to time, and lately I've been corresponding with a young woman in Spain who may be listening to this interview, who is going through extreme Kundalini emergency, or so she interprets it, and it sounds like that's what it is, to the point where she's paralyzed for many hours a day, going through all kinds of contortion. She says she feels this volcanic energy, you know, trying to rise up in her system, and just it's stuck. It's not moving. Her life is just a total mess. It's kind of like, maybe I never read Gopi Krishna's book, but I understand he went through a lot of similar stuff. So I mean, are you ever in contact with such people? Do you have ways of helping people who are going through what we might call a spiritual emergency like that?
I can say that only case by case. I can't make a general statement on this. But I have met people sometimes who are, because when I go to Brighton Bush, we have workshops in Brighton Bush.
Where's that?
In Oregon. Between Portland, it's near the Cascades. There's a place, a retreat center called the Brighton Bush Hot Springs. Ramdas used to go there before. You know Ramdas?
Sure.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Neem Karoli Baba's.
Yeah. So I go there for the last 11 years. Every year I've been doing a retreat there. I just came back from there, here. So I haven't met not too many, but a couple of people who have had this problem.
Really bad?
One was quite bad, and I think she has now got adjusted to normal. So I don't have a technique to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a person-to-person thing. So maybe if you meet this person, it's possible that something could be worked out. I don't know for sure, but it depends on the individual.
My sense is that it would be good if somehow some kind of clinic or some kind of... there are some people who specialize in Kundalini care. There's a lady named Joan Shivapita Harrigan, who has a Kundalini care clinic in Tennessee, whom I've interviewed. But apparently she doesn't take cases where people are in a spiritual emergency. She just takes cases where people are doing okay and they want to just redirect and you know. But there are these cases and doctors don't know how to deal with it. And
they don't know because it's something to do with their the centers of the brain which have not been explored.
Yeah, and doctors are just going to give them drugs, and that's not going to help it. So that hopefully, as we grow as a culture, as a society, we'll understand this better and give relief to such people.
I think we need centers where people like this can come.
Okay.
Well,
I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. People have been sending in nice questions, and I don't want to ignore them, and so we'll jump around a little bit because the questions are on different topics. But here's one from Srinivasan in Chennai. He asks, Arjuna continues to fight a war despite self-realization because his Swadharma is to be a warrior. This is a nuance often missed in the spiritual world, which advances the narrow idea of an enlightened individual only existing as a social worker or compassionate guru. Could you elaborate on the concept of Swadharma and the means to discover our personal Swadharma as well as that of others?
Swadharma is a very loaded word. I'm talking to Mr. Srinivasan. So, Swadharma, people interpret it as doing one's duties and so on. I think there's only one Swadharma. Swadharma is dharma for oneself, one's own dharma.
Right.
The one important Swadharma is to truly find yourself first. Who you are, where you are, what's your essential being. To figure that out would be your Swadharma. Because unless you figure out who you are or where you stand, What can you do to somebody else? You might be thinking you're helping somebody, but you're actually might be taking him to distraction. Or, yeah. So when I say Swadharma, while it is a good idea to work on, to help others and to be compassionate and so on, Swadharma actually is to find out who you really are, what's your source, and then having done that, to act from that plane, from that point.
Which is just what Krishna said in the Gita. He said, established in yoga, perform action.
Yeah. Now that action would be action without leaving any blot on yourself.
Right.
Where the action would be purely from a completely altruistic point of view. And nothing to do for yourself. But for that, I think one has to first discover one's own dharma. And to understand one's own dharma, one has to understand oneself first.
Yeah.
So I think that is the first step to be.
And you might actually be a warrior. It might not be a social worker. You might have a role to play that doesn't look very ahimsa, but is actually
ahimsa
your
is
role.
More to do with your mind state than with anything else. You can be a completely non-violent guy outwardly and be so violent inside.
Or vice versa, maybe.
Vice versa also.
Yeah.
You could look like quite an passive and peace-loving guy, but you might be filled with a lot of violence. This is also possible. It could be the other way too. So I'm saying first find out about swa. Swa means self.
Yeah.
And then from that, start working out.
Yeah. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else shall be added.
Then to you.
Here's a question from Paul in Asheville, North Carolina. Sri M says, it requires a great deal of hard work. In practical terms, what work does Sri M recommend on a daily basis for those seeking self-realization?
One is to set apart a certain period of your day for your spiritual practice. Now this should be inviolable, and it's hard work to do that, even to think that way. So when you say this particular time in the day I am going to do my spiritual practices, stick to that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I would ask people to do. Because it's very easy to get this illusion, all I know, so I can throughout the day be there and there at the same time and so on. But it's very fuzzy, it's not clear cut. So it's good to have a period set up when you say, this time I will only do my spiritual practice. Now that practice may be different for different people.
Sure.
So I think that is the first step. And that is not easy, that's hard work. When I say hard work, that's one of the things I mean, that when everybody is going on one direction, somebody turns around and is swimming against the stream. It's hard work. You may not be appreciated, people may criticize you, if not openly, at least they say, what's wrong with this guy? So if you can put up against with all that and still continue with your spiritual practice, that is what I mean by daily hard work.
Yeah.
And it has to be, there are no shortcuts.
When I first learned to meditate when I was a teenager, basically I had to drop all my friends because my friends were just taking drugs and all, and I just didn't want to hang around with them anymore. And eventually I got new friends. There's an old Bengali saying, which is that if no one comes on your call, then go ahead alone.
Absolutely. You can't. In this field, you cannot depend upon public opinion, one.
Yeah.
Second, that's why I say it's hard work. And the other is that it's, as you said, it's so relevant that people drop off. People who think in one way would definitely drop off because you're thinking in a different way. And sometimes you lose what you might have thought were your great friends and old friends. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
You have a new set of friends.
But when you use the phrase hard work, I'll bet you that you've done a lot of arduous things, but I bet you most of the time when you have sat to meditate, it's been blissful. It's not like you think to yourself, oh, I've got to go meditate, it's such hard work. It's more like, oh boy, I'm looking forward to this because it's so enjoyable.
In the beginning, no. In the beginning, it's difficult.
Okay.
In the beginning, when you started off, you have to bring your mind, which is normally distracted, in. So that is difficult. But once you start and once you kind of brought your mind back, you're no more a complete extrovert, but you can introvert yourself. And then as you become more perfect, you can introvert yourself at the press of a button, kind of.
Right.
Then it's not so difficult.
Here's a question from Sagar in Toronto, Canada, which relates to what you were just saying. He says, I keep moving between two states. One where I am not there, just presence, but then the mind comes up with a stream of thought and there is a sense of identification with it. Would you please address this type of experience?
Yeah, this happens to many people who meditate. There are times when you are just aware and not involved, and there are times when your mind gets involved. So in the yogic philosophy itself, the mind, the chitta, as it is called, is full of thoughts and distractions. So it is in the nature of the chitta to be full of thoughts and distractions. Now, the witness, which is aware of it, is not the chitta, but the purusha, the self. So somewhere along the line, you should sit continuously with the awareness that what is aware of the distractions is not the chitta, but the purusha. So much so that after a while, you are no longer associated with the distraction. Distraction is there. It is the nature of the mind. But you are not associated with it in any way when you realize that you are the witness to it and not the one that is involved in it. It has to come by and by.
It gets more stabilized over time, right?
Stabilized and deeper.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So it comes through constantly trying to, first of all, it's not as if you're trying to make the chitta totally silent. It's like you're understanding that the chitta, by its very nature, has vrittis.
Fluctuations.
Fluctuations.
Right.
But you are not that. You know, you're aware of it, but you're not that. It's like now you can have a lot of fluctuations of electricity, sound, weather, everything, but I'm not part of it. I'm watching it.
Yeah.
So when this is stabilized, then the wonderful thing is when this is stabilized, the chitta also becomes silent.
Now there's a subtle point here, which is that it's a description, prescription kind of issue, where people describe the state of being a witness and just sort of watching the activities of the mind. And that could be a description of the way one naturally functions at a certain state. But it could also be either offered as or mistaken to be a prescription, where you're telling people, watch your mind, try to be the witness, try to, while you're doing other things, try to maintain a presence. Are you advocating that, or would you consider that would divide the mind?
I think that would divide the mind.
Right, yeah.
It's not a prescription. I mean, I'm not saying there's a method.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that while this is happening, try and disassociate yourself from it. I mean, just be silent. Not.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm a little bit cautious is that people have gotten themselves into disassociative states. They've gotten disintegrated, and people lose jobs, lose relationships. They become kind of impractical in the world when they approach this in what I would consider to be a mistaken way, not quite what the original teachings were intending.
Yeah, you're right. So while we certainly require periods of isolation in this practice, isolation is not a prescription for your life.
Right.
It's not for your life. You do require periods of isolation, but when you come out of the isolation, you're not cut off from the world. You're integrated with it.
Yeah.
You don't come out with the feeling that this is different and I'm different. No. This is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Please. In fact, once you're stabilized in your inner self, it becomes much more easier to function in this world.
Yeah, naturally.
Because the mind is calm, it doesn't get agitated.
Right.
It does what it has to do quietly. And there is no distraction, and therefore, when you want to do something, you know how to put your complete attention on it.
Yes. And that's an important phrase, complete attention. if you're flying in an airplane, you wouldn't want your pilot to be sort of putting half his attention on flying the airplane and the other half on, oh, I am only the witness, or,
Exactly. Exactly. In fact, I keep telling people the description of the yoga, the 8-limbed yoga, one of the pratyahara, one of the limbs of Ashtanga yoga.
Say it again, because the audio broke up for a second. Say it. Pratyahara, did you say?
Ashtanga yoga.
I know. And then, which limb?
So, pratyahara.
Pratyahara. That's it. Yeah.
So it is like yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara. So pratyahara. Some people say it is withdrawal of the senses. I said, look, the pratyahara, this is a wrong translation of pratyahara. Pratyahara is that, as you said, when the pilot is sitting in the cockpit and he's flying, he's only flying. He's not thinking of meditation.
Right.
That he can do it one-pointedly without distraction by itself is meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully he's not thinking about what he had for dinner last night, or what he's going to go, where he's going to go on vacation. He's focused on flying.
So that is meditation.
Yeah.
It's not as if you should sit there and meditate on the Buddha.
Right. Yeah.
So, but when you're sitting down and meditating on your Buddha, when I mean Buddha, I'm talking about Bodha,
right.
Inner consciousness. When we're doing that, then you're not flying an aeroplane. You're not thinking of tomorrow, which is my flight.
Right.
This is what I mean.
Good. Here's a question from Elizabeth in Colorado. She asks, is the final enlightenment or awakening something that happens within time, or does it transcend time? And I think I'll just add to her question. Some people say, if you think that enlightenment is something that's going to happen to you sometime in the future, then you'll always be chasing it, like a donkey chasing a dangling carrot. And that, in fact, the only time enlightenment ever happens is now. So what would you say to that?
She also asked about time span, whether it's in time.
Yeah, is it time or does it transcend time?
Transcend time. Yeah, when the experience actually happens, it transcends time. But it's not as if it is there and you're going towards it.
Right.
The Upanishads have beautiful description of the truth. It says, tad dure tad vadantike, which means it's near, it's far, and yet so near.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it in an ordinary time pattern, it's far. But if you look at it from the inner point of view, it's right here. So it's not as if it's a linear progress from here to there. Here is a situation where it is everywhere and here, and then where are you traveling? I mean, where do you go? You sit. So it's more to do with not grasping, trying to grasp, and when all grasping ceases, perhaps it's right here. So you can't say it's going to come. When you say it's going to come, you're actually putting it away.
Yeah, it's kind of a conundrum in a way, because, I mean, if we say, okay, it's right here now, then by that token, everybody in the world is enlightened. And in some respect, perhaps they are, but it's not a living reality for them. And it will become a living reality for them, as far as I can see, sometime in the future. And yet it's right here, and yet they don't see it. Perhaps that's the best way of putting it.
That's why it's a conundrum. That's why they say it's there and it's far and yet so near. Because there's no other way that our so-called limited brain can grasp this concept. There's nothing.
Isn't there some saying in the Bible or someplace, maybe it's in the Vedic literature, the truth is spread all around but men do not see it? Some such phrase, you know that? Have you heard that one?
From the Bible, I haven't seen this. I have only seen, there is a verse in the Quran which says, whither ever you turn your face, there I am. There is a like that, which would be completely contradictory, because then you have to pray turning your face towards the Makkah. So anyway, so it's the answer to the question which this lady asked just now is that while from our ordinary point of view we are still here and not got enlightened.
Right.
Therefore, it's far in time. However, when we understand that enlightenment is not a thing to be pursued into the future, but it is understood now, then it touches the timeless factor. And if it has happened, it's certainly timeless.
Yeah. Okay, good. This next question from Mark Peters in Santa Clara, California, I think might possibly relate to the walk that you took from southern to northern India. And if not, you can answer the question anyway. But do you feel that spiritual awakening has a practical value for world problems? For instance, if enough people were to become spiritually awakened, could it help to solve the problem of global warming and so on? Or do you feel that the fate of the planet and human life upon it is ultimately uncorrelated with the deepening of consciousness?
No, I completely understand that if we are spiritually awakened, whatever that means, if we are, then in our actions it certainly reflects. And our actions will certainly be to integrate rather than to disintegrate. So bringing peace and not war, to be environmentally conscious and see that all living beings are as important as we are, including the plants, which are living beings. I think these are all expressions of one's spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
So I personally believe that if more people become spiritual in the real sense of the term, then it becomes a solution to the world's problems. Please, let me clarify. I'm not saying that if we all sit together and meditate on peace, we are going to get peace. No. I mean, that's a good thing to do. It can change minds. But a person with a spiritual understanding and realization, his actions would always reflect integrity and integration rather than disintegration. So when I say disintegration, in the bad sense of the term.
Yeah.
So therefore, my walk was, I didn't have an agenda except that I want people to come meet and talk to me and see how I think about this whole situation of life. And so we went from village to village to city. We met all kinds of people. And I'm convinced that we have planted this, at least the seeds of harmony in some way. It takes time to grow. You plant a seed, tomorrow it doesn't become a big tree. It takes time, it needs to be nurtured. Various factors involved. So I think that if more and more people are spiritually inclined, in the real sense of the term, not to consider spiritual as being some kind of a runaway from society or, to hide from society or an excuse for laziness or things like not that.
No.
Then the mind becomes good and kind and better, and it reflects on everybody else.
I hope you wore shoes on this walk and you didn't go barefoot.
I had shoes.
Good. And hopefully good shoes, not just little rubber flip-flops. But
I did try the rubber flip-flops in the beginning, but it gave me a lot of trouble, so I wore proper walking shoes.
Good.
You have to be practical in these matters.
Yeah.
These Arabs have a saying, you trust in God, but tie your camels.
Yeah. I would love to have been on that walk with you. It must have been a wonderful adventure. I'll go on the next one.
Do they allow
Next walk.
dogs?
My wife wants to know if they allowed dogs on the walk.
Oh, dogs are allowed.
No, apparently not. Oh, you said yes or no on the dogs?
Yes.
Oh, yes, dogs are allowed. Okay, so next time we're coming and bringing our dogs. Just a note on what we were just discussing. I would say, and would you agree, that everything we see on a global scale, world problems, health problems, economic problems, environmental problems, so on and so forth, are kind of just a manifestation on the most surface level of the conglomeration of human consciousness. 7 billion people, each of them having a certain makeup, a certain state of mind, a certain state of consciousness, and taken collectively, in their own individual lives they produce an influence, and you can see that in their family, for instance, but then in the community, in the nation, in the world, all the quality of life that we see on the surface is just a reflection of the quality of all the consciousness of all the individuals making up the society, and just as a tree, as a forest, which is all gray and brown, might be, it's gray and brown because each individual tree is gray and brown, and if you want the forest to be green, you have to water each individual tree. So conversely, if you want the whole society to really be free of all these huge problems, something needs to be done to elevate the consciousness of each individual that makes up society. That was a rather long-winded statement, but do you see it that way?
I believe so. You see, when you say society, there's no society without us.
Right, we're it.
Society is human beings, right? So unless we, and also a little bit I differ on these colors. They need not be all green.
Well, that's just a metaphor.
Yeah. The whole of nature lives in its different multiplicity. Mm-hmm. Even though there is an essential unity, outward it's all multiple. In fact, Prakriti, which is the word used in Sankhya philosophy for the earth, for the universe, Prakriti. The very definition of Prakriti is Prakaroti iti Prakriti. Prakriti is that which differentiates. So differences are bound to be there. There is an essential unity somewhere behind. So I personally believe if human beings, we who form society, can change, then these things can change. Reformation from outside is not going to do much. It's necessary, of course, sometimes, but you can't hope to get the change that we seek by just social reformation.
Right.
It has to come from inside.
Yeah. And along the lines of what you're just saying, if we were to eventually have a quote-unquote enlightened society, we probably wouldn't. Everybody wouldn't be the same. In fact, there'd even be greater variety. I mean, if you water a forest, then look at the Amazon rainforest. How the variety and diversity there, where you have a really sort of thriving ecosystem.
So right. So our attempt should not be to grow only lotuses or grow only, roses. Yeah. We should have a garden where everything is. Yeah. And everything grows equally well. I mean, this is the thing, you cannot turn roses into lotuses and lotuses into roses. They have their own nature. But to have a good lotus and a good rose, this is the aim. Yeah.
I guess you could say if the innermost self or spirit is the ultimate nourishment that drives it's the fuel that animates our life, then, just if that fuel starts to be more abundant, each life is going to flourish in its diversity as well as be more harmonious with all the others. Yeah, without clashing. Yes. Right. Here's a question from someone you probably know. It's Priyam in Mandanapalli, your town in India. She asks...
she's a dentist.
Oh, she's a dentist? Okay, well this question has nothing to do with dentistry. She says, for someone who needs to start reading Upanishads, which would you recommend they start with, and which English translation by which author would you recommend? And of course you have a book commenting on several of the Upanishads. I was reading it last night.
I think one of the best Upanishads to start with is the Katha Upanishad. Mm-hmm. The Katha Upanishad is a very beautiful Upanishad. It's a dialogue between the Lord of Death, the King of Death, Yama, and this young boy, Nachiketas, who goes there to his court. It's beautiful. Yeah. He's asking him to tell him the meaning of death and what is life and so on. So, and a very good translation. There are many translations nowadays of the Upanishads, but my recommendation would be to go back to the rather impartial, simple translation of Dr. Radhakrishnan. Dr. Radhakrishnan was one of the presidents of India at one time, but he was a great scholar. And although it tends a little more towards Advaita Vedanta of Shankara, because he was more of a Shankarite, it doesn't matter. But it's because he didn't belong to a certain cult or anything, it's absolutely non-denominational. It's clear. So I think, and it's very simply written.
And how do you spell that, Katha Upanishad?
Katha Upanishad, K-A-T-H-O, Katha Upanishad.
Right.
Katha. I think that's a very good start. And the next would be the Ishavasya Upanishad, because it is the smallest of the Upanishads.
Isha.
Isha.
And you do a
Upanishad.
commentary on that one, don't you?
I have.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a beautiful.
And is that the one that Purnamida is in?
Purnamada Purnamidam is the beginning of the sloka before you start the Upanishad.
Right. Oh, all of them, or that particular one?
In different Upanishads have different, they're called the Shanti parts, the first beginning. And because Purnamada talks about everything being complete, and Ishavasya Upanishad talks about the all-pervading reality. So it links it together.
Beautiful. Let me see here. There's a few more questions. Here's a good one from, Srinivasan again. He's prolific in, in Chennai. He says, the concept of Kaivalya, how does it compare with Buddhist enlightenment ideals such as arhatship and Buddhahood?
It's a technical question, but let me put it this way. There are different schools of thought that describe enlightenment. Kaivalya is a word which is picked up from the Yoga Sutras. It's from Sankhya and Yoga Darshanas, Kaivalya. Kaivalya simply means complete, pure awareness without anything else. Kaivalya. It means
alone. Does it mean alone?
Alone.
Right.
It means when you realize that you're alone, there's nothing else but you, not in the sense of Srinivas or M, but you in your true essence of the term. That would be dangerous to think that only M exists.
Sort of one without a second kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So when this happens, this is called Kaivalya. Now the Vedantic term used is moksha. Moksha also means the same, but it adds the other dimension, one more dimension, which is freedom. I personally think Kaivalya is not different from freedom. Kaivalya also means to be free. When there's nothing but that, there's nothing to be entangled or conditioned by. And moksha means freedom from rebirth, freedom from conditioning, and being free forever. I mean, this is moksha. Okay. Now when the Buddhist says nirvana, not only the Buddhists, even the Jains call it nirvana, the ultimate state. There is somewhere along the line a misunderstanding that nirvana actually means that everything is gone, like the blowing out of the candle. I have had several discussions with Buddhist monks, unknown, known, including His Holiness Dalai Lama. And what has emerged from my understanding is that nirvana means basically a snuffing out of all the agitating, distracting and negative impulses from the mind. Not total annihilation. There is a wrong idea, which is why people say, is this the same as that? It's not annihilation. It is annihilation of all that holds you down, all that is heavy and dark and negative, all that like your greed and your lust and your desire. When that is cleaned, and the mind attains to a state which is called nirvana.
Did the Dalai Lama agree with that when you offered that?
Yeah, I didn't offer it.
Well, you
see, it started like this. We were having in fact, I thought he must be busy because so many people were waiting for me. He said, don't worry. So the thing was about the Upanishad. The Kena Upanishad, which comes from the Samaveda, says, Yan manasana manyute yanahur manum. That means that which even the mind cannot reach. But because of which the mind has its capacity to think. That alone is the truth, nothing that you worship here. This is the Kena Upanishad. So the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, stopped me. He said, just a minute. If the mind also cannot reach it, then what have we to do with it? We have nothing to do with it. If even the mind cannot reach it, so what do? Nothing. So I said, what it means is the ordinary mind cannot reach it. He said, yeah, that's right. So ordinary mind. So what kind of mind can reach it? The mind that is clear of its temptations, its lust, its anger, its greed, such a mind can understand it, right? Yes, he said that is nirvana. This is how the conversation came.
I would also say perhaps that, there's that yogas chitta vritti nirodha, that when the mind reaches that, it's like getting out of a boat. You have reached the shore, so the boat has served its purpose. The mind is transcended, at least momentarily, or that is beyond the active mind. It's more fundamental than the active mind.
Right. So therefore, when people ask this question, like Mr. Srinivas, somewhere along the line, the idea is, well, Buddhism does not believe in a creator God, in Ishvara. So can it be the same, the nirvana, as, for instance, moksha? But I would say that in all these, there is no mention of creator God at all, including Sankhya. Yoga believes, of course, in the theory of yoga. But the state of Kaivalya, moksha and nirvana, by definition, in essence, are the same.
It seems to me that all these different religions and schools of thought and so on, including the systems of Indian philosophy, it's not like they're competing or combating one another. It's more like they just have different angles on the truth and different specialties. I mean, one of them, the specialty is to focus on this and not the other things, because those things are taken care of. And there may seem to be contradictions between them, but in the larger picture, they're all just pieces of a larger puzzle, like the blind man feeling the elephant,
Yeah, and that story of the elephant actually comes from ancient Jain sources, which was elaborated upon and made a favorite story by Jalaluddin Rumi in his Masnavi. So it comes from Jain sources. So the source is not important.
Right.
The thing is more important. Now, the Jains have something which is so interesting. It's called Anekavada. Anekantavada. That means something could be what I think, it could also be what somebody else thinks.
That's good attitude.
Yeah. Anekantavada, it's called, which means, oh well, it may be this, it may be that. And the elephant story comes from that tradition.
Right.
Because ultimately the whole, nobody knows.
And both are right, even though they're experiencing something completely different. And they could argue with each other, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and no, you're actually both right. It's just part of the larger picture.
It's like Vedantavad, they call it Anekantavada. That means, well, that may be what you think, okay, you're right, but maybe somebody else, that may be right too.
Yeah. So, you're traveling around, right? People will be watching this for years, but right now you're in the United States and you're in the West Coast, and you'll be going to Dallas pretty soon, and then Long Island. And you have a website, satsang-foundation.org, is it, or .com?
Yes.
.org?
.org.
Which I'll be linking to from Batgap. And people can check out your schedule and your various activities there and everything. Is there something set up whereby somebody who's interested, wherever they live, can learn something to practice as a spiritual practice? For instance, someone asked another Srinivasan from a different place in India, must be a common name, Gurgaon, India, asks, can you, Kriya Yoga, are you teaching what, Yogananda taught? You've used the word Kriya. Do you have a practice that you advocate or that people can learn in order to get into the routine of a daily practice?
I do, but it can't be done
remotely.
Yeah.
Right.
People come and meet me, and then they sit down and discuss. The Kriya which I teach comes from the same tradition as Yogananda Paramahamsa. There's no doubt about that, because Yogananda Paramahamsa was taught by Yukteswar Maharaj, who was Lahiri Mahashay's disciple, who was Babaji's disciple, one of the prominent disciples in this time. So it's the same tradition, therefore the Kriya Yoga practice, the basic Kriya Yoga practice is the same. It can't be different. I have met people, I've talked to the SRF and the YSS people, and it's the same. However, there are certain practices which are not commonly taught to everybody. It depends on the teacher and the student. So when you are in touch with the student, you might feel that this can be added or that can be subtracted. Now there are such elements which may be little different, but the basic theory of the Kriya Yoga, which means that the energies in your body have to be concentrated and made to, your awareness has to travel from your Shushumna Nadi, which is in the center, from the Muladhara to the Sahasrara, along with the prana. Now, this is common to both the Yogananda's teachings and our teachings. The technique to do that may differ here and there a little bit, depending on,
Does it involve pranayama?
It is. It is a very, very closely linked to pranayama.
And some mantra meditation, or?
It has some bijaksharas to be chanted along with the centers, the chakras. But there are many disciplines of similar kind.
And so, let's say somebody's watching this and they're in Australia and you're not going to go to Australia, they can't travel. What would you recommend for them?
I would say that they should start with the preliminary practice, which can be given to all.
And how do they get that?
It doesn't cause any harm because you're not dealing with anything directly with energies. So a simple method which we call, which in some traditions also they don't teach unless you're initiated, but I think we have evolved and it's time to come out, and not keep things in the dark and hide it somewhere and make it look so mysterious. So this is, Babaji has given me permission to give the first part of, which is called, we call it the Hamsa technique. The Hamsa technique. The Bengalis say Hamsa, but it is Hamsa. Which is basically to first to do the Guru Mantra, which is to place your hand in your... Nowadays I have been broadcasting the Guru Mantra. In our tradition, the Guru Mantra is Sri Guru Babaji is considered to be the Guru. So the mantra applicable to him, we practice by visualizing a white lotus in the heart center here, Anahat, inside, and two little feet on that, not feet, footwear, padukas we call it, footwear on that, and consider them to be Sri Guru Babaji's padukas. And we hold it with our hands and chant Om Hreem Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Om Hreem Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Quietly. There is no counting, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending upon your time. And we believe that if that is done, you're kind of establishing a link with Sri Guru Babaji.
Do you do that out loud or mentally?
Mentally.
Mentally.
Yeah. And let me make it clear, which doesn't mean, I have to make it very clear, that when you start doing it, Babaji is going to come and stand near your bedroom. That's not what it means. It means that, people have various, so the link is established. And when it is established, we believe that somehow or the other, the Kriya will come your way. Because it comes from that source. Okay. So after doing the Guru Mantra, then we do the Hamsa. Now Hamsa is to sit quietly in any comfortable posture with your head and spine erect, cross-legged if possible, and then hands can be held this way or just like this or on the knees, it doesn't matter. And then instead of controlling your breath, to just watch your breath passively as it goes in and out. And when the breathing goes in, which means when you inhale, in your mind you chant the sound hum. And when you exhale, you chant the sound of sa. You can say S-A-U, sa. So it's hum, sa, hum, sa. You're not controlling your breath in any way. You're just watching your breath, and when you inhale, you're saying hum to yourself, and sa when you exhale out. And remain doing this for a long time, watching your breath. You can hold your breath if you like, but this is not part of the technique. So just do this. Now, when you start doing it, the first thing you would notice is at some point you feel like giving a deep sigh automatically, spontaneous. When the sigh happens, then it's a sign that your mind is settling down. And you do nothing. You don't expect anything to happen. You're not going anywhere. You're just saying hum saw in your mind, watching your breath. Just that, with no expectations. But when you do that after doing Om Shri, Om Hrim Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha, which is the Guru Mantra, I have found that it works better. And then after watching hum saw for a while, let go of even that and just sit quietly. Just be a witness. And then go down before you leave and say thank you. And this is a simple thing which anybody can do. It doesn't matter what denomination you are, a Buddhist or a Christian, whether you believe in God with form or without form, whether you believe in this saint, it doesn't matter. Anybody can do it.
And while you're doing this, if you find that you're getting sleepy or your mind is wandering or something, what should you do?
Now, if your mind is wandering, the only way is to bring it back to the hum saw.
Gently?
Again and again, gently.
Gently.
And if you're feeling sleepy, the reason is, one is that the mind is relaxed. And a relaxed mind, if it cannot go into higher states of consciousness, it usually goes into sleep. So you have to get up and wash your face, or there is no way out. Sit down and do it again.
What if you have a backlog of fatigue and maybe what you really need is a nap, and then after your nap you'll have a fresher experience?
Then you should take a nap, come back and do it.
Yeah.
Better.
Good.
Better to do that.
Okay, well I'm glad that we were able to take the time to have you give people a little something like that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for this conversation. I feel it's just such a joy to talk to you. It's really,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that I'm talking to you, because sometimes it's difficult to talk when people don't have the ABC. So it's easier.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm up to D now, so...
And what I mean is when you know the...
Yeah, I know it. I've been doing it. You and I almost share a birthday. We were both born in 1949.
Really?
I in October, you in November.
Okay.
So we both have birthdays coming up. And
thank you very much then.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice meeting you too.
Let me just make a couple of general concluding remarks before we disconnect. Those of you who have been watching a part of an ongoing series. I've been doing these every week for over 6 years now. And if you'd like to check out previous ones, go to batgap.com, B-A-T-G-A-P, and there just explore the menus. You can, there's an audio podcast you can sign up for. You can sign up to be notified by email each time a new one is posted, and a variety of other things. Recently we put up a glossary of Sanskrit terms and also a glossary of non-dual terms, and over time we'll keep developing and adding things like that people might find helpful. So thank you for listening or watching, and thank you again, Sri M. It's really been a delight. Enjoy your stay in the United States, and hope to meet you in person sometime.
Sure. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.